Good afternoon. My name is Kelly, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the FNC webinar. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. Thank you, Mr. Telford. You may begin your conference.
Thank you, operator. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you joining the FNC quarterly update call. How are you doing, Neil?
I'm doing great.
Fabulous. Enjoying the summer heat.
I am. 90 degrees is wonderful.
Excellent. Well, again, we certainly appreciate each of you taking a few minutes to join us today, both our customers, our partners, and any of our prospects that we're talking with. We have a goal when we do these calls, and that is to help everyone we can understand what's currently going on in the marketplace with the regulatory topics. We, as FNC, is in the middle of it often. We feel like we have an opportunity to share some of the things we're learning and the perspective that can help with our lenders succeed.
Well, I think that's right, and try to kind of be a gathering place for some more information that sometimes comes in from 25 different sources, and we can be a clearinghouse a little bit.
As mentioned, the phone lines have been muted. If at any time during the presentation you have a question, please send it to fncwebinars@fncinc.com. And we really do want to hear questions. That's a big part of how we can help you all solve the challenges you're facing, is by hearing the real-world questions. And we've done our best to gather information as we talk, but certainly we appreciate the questions we receive. And always feel free to contact your account representative or anyone on the sales team that you work with to get more details about what we'll talk to today. There's our lovely pictures, Neil. Looking younger every year.
You know, your high school pictures are really good.
All right, so here's our agenda today. We're going to first talk about a few current events and things that are going on.
Right.
We'll follow that with a discussion of the TILA-RESPA events and some of the information that we're learning and hearing. Obviously, the date's been set now at October 3rd. We're going to talk about the FHA electronic delivery portal and some updates to their handbook. We're learning more details, and progress has been made since we last talked. And lastly, we'll talk about the AQB, which is the Appraisal Qualification Board. We'll talk about some of the changes they've made or are talking about making, and, of course, the AMC regulation.
Sure.
Just pure excitement as always, Neil. We want to stack up the agenda.
Get your seatbelt.
All right. So as many, just to review some of the things that FNC focuses on. Since its inception, FNC has been focused on standardizing and aggregating data, specifically around the real estate transaction. We continue to work toward that end, expanding beyond appraisal into other parts of the business. We've been delivering solutions since 1999. We have offices in California, Dallas, Detroit, New York, Sao Paulo, Brazil. We've had great success. We focus very hard on putting that data into a national collateral database.
Right.
And we do that in such a manner that we can help build analytics.
Absolutely.
And these analytics are really one of the ways that FNC differentiates itself, in that we have the analytics with the based on the most reliable database and helping solve the real problems that lenders face today.
Right.
All right. And as always, as most of you know and have been aware, we have three types of solutions. We have our pipes, we have our data, and we have our analytics. And that's just how we divide our company up to help focus. So we have our CMS, which works in conjunction with the National Collateral Database, and then we build our analytics in our collateral DNA, and we go from there in delivering our solutions. So enough about us, Neil, just to make sure everybody's on the same page of how FNC looks at the market and how we approach things.
Right.
All right, so let's jump into some of the current events. So, Neil, there's lots of stuff going on. We have interest rates that have been still good, but there's the looming threat of the Fed making a change.
Well, you know, that's an interesting one. The Federal Reserve has been following this practice of sort of keeping interest rates low, but so interest rates are, there's more than one interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about two. The Federal Reserve has kind of dampened down, the federal funds rate and sort of a lot of the other rates in the market, just to allow us to come out of a very, very deep recession. But they're just at the point where they're thinking about, and they've announced that they're intending, or they might change their into going back up.
Yeah,
because at some point, if you go to zero, you don't have much.
And we see the lots of different news lately. I know the NBA is now saying that they think September is the date that the Fed begins to increase the interest rates.
Right.
But the NBA's latest updated forecast doesn't think that will necessarily impact the housing market because of the strength of the jobs market.
Well, right, and the other, that's why I'm saying interest rates aren't, there's more than one interest rate, and the fact that the federal funds rate or some of the very, very short-term rates may change, mortgage rates aren't, that's not how they're tied. They tend to be tied to the 10-year Treasury, and so you're likely to see that. In fact, if you look at the most current SME forecast, they're just assuming, well, first off, if you look over the next 2 years, not projecting any deep decline. In fact, they're sort of seeing it kind of slowly
stable,
keep going up. If you look at the course of the rest of part of this year, we've seen the lowest interest rates we're going to see at least in the next year and a half. They're kind of, they said the average rate in the second quarter is 3.8. But this quarter now is 4.2, last quarter 4.4. So you can see kind of inching up. Now, interestingly, all of that is lower than it was last year, but they're just not saying it's not going to go down. Okay.
All right.
Now,
next topic on the current events, the TRID date. We'll save that for the next slide because I know we're going to dig deep into that. But suffice to say, the 10-3 date is now official. It's no longer proposed. The 10-3 date for TRID is official.
You should have said, spoiler alert for that. Right. That's,
I thought, we always agree we're not going to try to be humorous.
Yeah, okay. We don't have much skill in it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So home prices, again, if you look at different indexes and information coming out, I see some saying there's been declines, some saying there's been increase. I mean, really, the market is depending on where you are, it's doing lots of different things.
Right, and if you look at home prices and residential mortgage activity kind of together, what you're seeing is a couple of things. One is in some markets it's very tight. If you wanted to buy a house in San Francisco today, it would be going up and up because San Francisco is only so big. There's only so many houses, and there's a lot of demand. Other parts of the country, it has not been quite that way. What's been interesting is that we're seeing, and the MBA is forecasting some real increases in residential sales transactions.
Purchase.
Yeah,
so the purchase forecast is up. The refi is
refi's dropped out. Completely out of sight. But what that means is you and I are buying houses. And that's tied to the fact that we're having better and better employment. I mean, people buy houses when they have jobs. You've got to have jobs first before houses.
All right.
What does that mean? That means that I get more activity. And in some markets, because more people put houses on the market, it actually could depress housing prices for a while. But,
we'll see. Still uncertainty out there as to what's going on.
Yeah, but for everybody, that's good news.
So and to briefly cover the last three, we got Fannie and Freddie status. I mean, you see noise occasionally in the news about different people proposing legislation, but it doesn't seem like there's anything significant going on there. It's pretty much status quo with regard to Fannie and Freddie.
Right. I mean, things are changing, but you're right. There's no consensus on what to do.
And with regard to the CFPB, specifically enforcement actions, there really hasn't been anything, at least public, that we're aware of any significance. I know I saw an article about one small bank that got hit back in April, and appraisal issues were mentioned as one of the reasons why, poor collateral valuation processes and underwriting.
Right, but you sort of have to say you kind of look at two parts of what the CFPB, there's really three parts of the CFPB. One is the regulatory side, the regulations, review and that sort of stuff. Then there's the examination piece. And everybody who's been a regulated lender knows about, that's where people come in and do examinations. Enforcement comes in sort of if there's other issues. In there, they do publish kind of what their supervisor highlights. And I picked out three that came up, and you're right, you're not seeing many of these civil money penalties and stuff like that, consent orders, but right now, what are they seeing? What they call weakness in compliance management systems. We have a CMS, we call it a collateral management system. The CFPB believes in this idea that you need to have a compliance management system.
Okay.
Now, we've incorporated a lot of this into the CMS to do that. But they're assuming, they believe in process and procedures and so on to do that. And so when they find out, that's a big issue. There's a couple other things that have come up. And by the way, we haven't even got to TRID, but they're already talking about, okay, how about 2.4.3, failure to completely comply with regulation and action requirements for the good faith estimate. So, we haven't even solved the old way. We got a new way. Failure to comply with the regulation and action requirements for the completion of HUD 1. So,
lots for lenders to think about, summing it up, lots to think about with respect to what is expected of them from the CFPB.
Right, and just one, I know you're trying to move me on, but there's one last thing that I think has been a big issue with the CFPB. They've opened up their consumer complaint.
The hotline?
It's a hotline. They've received the consumer complaint database. They've received 421,413 complaints already. 98% of those consumers got a prompt response. That doesn't mean they resolved, doesn't mean they were satisfied and so on.
But they got a response.
That data is all public, and if you're interested in hearing what consumers are thinking about what's going on, that's a pretty good place.
All right.
Okay.
The last thing you wanted to talk about the drought.
Yeah.
I assume this is the drought in California.
Well, now the people. Okay, we sometimes claim that, although it actually rained back home for a couple of days, confusing everybody. But, the core issue of the drought is no different than any other circumstance. And that is, the question I ask is, so if you run out of water, what's your house worth? and we have houses in the Central Valley that effectively have completely run out of water. And so everything, value is, the world is not immune. And these factors all come into play. I put drought on there. It doesn't just affect California. It affects lots of, Nevada, Arizona.
So from an awareness standpoint, and lenders that make loans in California, it's something to certainly pay attention to. And if it continues, it will likely become a bigger issue when it comes to the financing of homes.
Right.
All right. All right, Neil. So we're moving on.
Okay.
We're now at the first topic that we wanted to discuss, and that's the new TRID, TILA Integrated Disclosures.
Right.
We know this is going to happen now. Officially, it's going to happen on 10/3.
Yes.
The CFPB came out and stated that, and they said that there was a lot of discussion and feedback from industry participants about delaying it, about making some changes. It sounds like there wasn't much change to what was going to happen on August 1st. They just shifted the date.
Right.
They said, thanks for the comments. We're going to go ahead and go with 10/3.
Right. And they picked October 3rd on purpose because that is a Saturday. And there's a reason for that. So many programs, when we talk a little bit later about the FHA EAD program, there's pilots, there's phase-ins, there's all this stuff. There is no phase-in. This is what kind of a cliff. It is October 3rd and not 5 minutes before that. Yep. So if you take a loan application on October 2nd, it is under the old rules. It's, and then you wake up the next day, you get your new application on October 3rd, it's under the new rules. So you're going to have a lot of transactions that are going to be kind of flowing through your system. They're going to run into old system and new system. Yep. And by the way, even though we sort of assume that this covers mortgage lending. There are some carve-outs, and so it applies to all closed-end consumer credit loans secured by a dwelling. Did I get that all out at the same time? So what does that mean? It does not cover HELOCs. Why? They're open-end mortgages. So what does that mean for a HELOC? Old rules. That means you still got to do a good faith estimate, a preliminary TILA, you got to do a HUD-1, and a final TILA. So, you see what I'm saying is that you're going to have to keep, you can't, everything you do for less than 3 years, you got to keep it, and
do something else. So your lenders will have to have simultaneous capabilities to do with the new integrated disclosures, and also be able to handle with the GFE and the HUD-1. All right. So let's quickly cover the two main pieces of this. I'm assuming that the people that have joined our call, you'll have a general understanding, but let's quickly review the components and how they impact. As we'll talk a little bit more about how they impact the appraisal side, the collateral valuation side.
Right, and I realize a lot of this is a review, but it'll set the stage for kind of where we're going to go. Essentially, the loan estimate replaces the good faith estimate and the initial truth in lending disclosure 3 business days after receiving an application. The application is not it's not like the 1003. It is 6 pieces of information. We've listed them up there: consumer's name, address of property, income, social security number for your credit report, estimated value of the property, and amount of the requested mortgage, right?
So once I'm a lender, and once I have that information, I'm now obligated, my clock starts ticking, and I'm obligated to make certain disclosures.
Right, and there's all kinds of discussions about how making sure you don't get all 6 pieces of information, but basically, once you get those, you really have to disclose the estimated cost of the transaction and the preliminary truth in lending. Estimated costs. So all of those costs you've been disclosing before, you got to disclose every ounce of those. The important thing is, this is intended as a document by which. Remember, this is a consumer regulation.
Sure.
So this is intended as a way for consumers to shop. Whether they do that or not, we don't know. But if I give you this loan estimate, it doesn't mean you're obligated to do anything. You don't have to
just
take my loan.
information.
It's your information, and in fact, there's some things in that you're going to get to in a minute that make sure that you don't feel like you have to do something.
Right. They don't want consumers, to feel obligated because they go through the process of getting a loan estimate.
Right. And so it doesn't. But you have to get an intent to proceed. We're gonna talk about what that is in here in a second.
I saw your car, and I never saw you when I was getting up to leave, and I saw Sean.
And this is, so we have the loan estimate. So the second document is the closing disclosure.
Yes. So the first is loan estimate. That'll always be at the beginning.
Perfect.
Closing disclosure.
Right.
Now replacing the HUD.
The HUD-1 and the final TILA. So this is delivered 3 business days before consummation of the mortgage. That is not the same thing as closing. That's when the consumer, under state laws, created an obligation to repay. So typically that means when you sign the mortgage or something, or sign the note, depending on what state you're in, that may mean you also close the next 5 minutes. Many other places you sign one day, close it some other day. But the important thing is the consumer needs to receive this 3 business days in advance. Well, okay, but if I'm not handing it to you, I'm going to use what's called the mailbox rule. I won't tell you where that came from, but I then need to mail, or I'm delivering it by mail or email. I got to count back as 3 more days. So basically, if you wanted to close on Friday, I had to ship that to you last Friday.
Yeah.
And so that is a major, major change, because anybody who's gone through a real estate transaction today knows that final HUD-1 wasn't final until about 7 minutes before.
So previously there could be lots of modifications and adjustments as necessary.
Right.
And there were tolerances, and we're going to talk about that. There were some tolerances. If something changed a little bit, that was okay.
Yeah.
And if other things changed, that was not okay. But going forward, it's much more stringent as to how a lender has to behave when providing these disclosures to the consumer.
Right, right. And if you count your days on your fingers, if you thought about a 30-day transaction, I've already stolen the first, up to 10 days because the loan estimate doesn't expire for 10 days, and I have to respond, and I counted back another. So I've just stolen like 15 days out of that 30 days for somebody to put a mortgage together.
So lenders are working, obviously these are things that they're working on that have a significant impact in the timing of their processes and their workflows.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in the appraisal side in a minute. So that means settlement agent, lender have to work very close together. Lender's responsible. Now let's get to the tidbit. This is your tidbit.
People love tidbits now.
Yeah.
All right, so tidbits. So we have there's something that impacts. There's several things actually. Several tidbits. So tell us about this little one.
This one, this is a change, and a lot of people have not got this. First off, for the lender to get going, they need to get what's called an intent to proceed. Now that could be however they decide what that is. Maybe that's a phone call or an email or even whatever it is. But until I get that intent to proceed, I can't charge for any settlement services other than the credit report. And more importantly, that's why I put in parentheses, a credit card. If I take your credit card or a post-dated check, that is considered the same as charging for the service. So we know we have a lot of clients who take a credit card in advance for all the streets.
Mm-hmm.
You won't be able to do that anymore. And so what that's doing is it's just move that date out. And so it means that nobody's going to order an appraisal until it gets
until they have an intent to proceed, and that can be. I don't know that that's clearly. The specifics of that are not clearly defined, but clearly the lender has to be comfortable that they have received authorization to proceed with ordering those services and attempting to put together a loan for that applicant.
And collecting then they can ask for your credit card and stuff like that. So
yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that may be a change to processes for our clients to pay attention to.
Yeah, and it's interesting when I bring that up, and it's in the implementation guide. People they have not caught that. That's a big change.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So this is your favorite part.
I do like this part. So one of the things that's on the loan estimate, and it's always been on the good faith estimate as well,
sure,
was an estimate of the cost associated with the appraisal and associated services.
Right.
So that's nothing new.
Right.
That I need to disclose that information. But as you described earlier, once I receive those 6 pieces of information, I'm now obligated to tell the consumer what the cost of the appraisal service will be if they do a loan with me.
Right.
And as we've talked about before, this is early in the process. I haven't received intent to proceed, so I haven't engaged an appraiser to potentially find that out. So I, as a lender, have got to be able to understand what the cost of that appraisal is going to be with a certain degree of certainty.
Right.
Okay?
Right. And remember on the GFE, you did have some tolerance. You didn't have to be.
It was 10%, right?
10%. Now what they have is they have this category of services you can't shop for. The appraisals and actually anything paid to the lender, but tax service, flood certification. There's some things that the CFPB believes the lender knows a lot more about this than the consumer, and so they do this all the time. They should know the answer to this question, and there's no margin. If it's between the consumer and the lender should take has the obligation to get it right.
Right.
So,
anyway. Yep. So obviously this is a challenge that our clients have raised to us, and people that we talk to in the marketplace as well are talking about different solutions or how they might solve this problem. So of course F&C being deeply integrated into the collateral valuation process at lenders, we're going to put forth a solution that will help our clients. So the collateral management system, our CMS systems, have always contained the fees that were associated with that an appraiser might charge or that a lender would offer in a particular area. That's critical because lenders have, nothing has changed with regard to paying customary and reasonable fees, Neil.
Right.
So lenders are on the hook to have that information and to know what that is and be able to ensure that they're doing that as part of their process.
Right, because whatever I disclose on that loan estimate is a cap.
Yes, but it becomes the most I can pay.
Well, it's the most I can charge you, the borrower.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that's the most I'm going to pay. You know, the appraiser, you know.
In other words, regardless of what I disclose on the
Right.
the loan estimate, I'm still obligated to pay a customary and reasonable fee to
Right.
the appraiser for the service.
Right.
And so, because these fees are no longer shoppable, that means that a lender can't just redisclose later if the appraisal fee becomes significantly different because the property is complex. And so potentially a lender would not be able to redisclose or wouldn't want to,
Right.
And would have to eat the difference between the fee that they disclosed and the fee that was actually paid to the appraiser to be customary and reasonable.
So Chuck, how do I solve it?
So
I mean, but that's exactly right. That's the quandary. And how do I solve it?
So for the CMS platform, as I mentioned, we've always had the fees, and many clients have used different approaches to ensure they get the fee right. There's geography, there's service type. And so what we've been able to determine, Neil, is using a combination of the geographic characteristics of a property and other neighborhood information, we can estimate the complexity of the assignment, and we put that into a complexity score.
So what you're saying is that I know that in a very conforming neighborhood, tract houses that were all built at the same time, about the same size, there's not much, the difference between those is not much complexity.
Right.
On the other hand, if I get a lot of, I won't call them custom homes, but individually built houses built over a period of time, different site influences, very different.
Right, and it can be also, we take into account the availability of data in the area. So it may be a very typical home for an area, but it's a very rural area with not a lot of activity, and so it becomes a difficult valuation assignment.
Right.
And so by taking the complexity and using, also if a lender desires, using a value range of the property, where is this estimated to fit or where is the sales price fit, using the combination of those two factors, we can help estimate what the fee should be on the front end using just the address of the subject property. And so
that's very cool.
So that's a solution that we've tested and we validated, and we'll be disseminating more details to our clients shortly regarding how they can take advantage of that solution. So
that's very nice.
So we know it's a real problem, and we believe we have several different ways, what I just mentioned being one of them, and how we can help our customers take care of their needs and be in compliance.
Right. Now, and there's no matter how good that model is, there's nothing to immunize you from the kinds of things that happen. All of a sudden, I need to do another inspection, or I got a trip.
Sure.
Just the way it is. You're going to get those, but sometimes. This is you win some, you lose some, and so on. What you just don't want to get is really lose some.
You don't want to underestimate because that can cause problems. So we're going to help the lenders do a good job of estimating what that fee is going to be on the front end, so that they more accurately represent the reality on the back end.
Right.
So we're definitely excited about that. All right, Neil, let's continue on the discussion.
This is just. Basically, this is that last reminder about settlement agents. Especially in the last couple of years, federally regulated lenders, and as a result, that means that everybody who provides services to them and everybody else is now aware that everybody is now under these third-party oversight rules. Well, up until now, just as they apply to appraisers, appraisal management companies, technology companies like us, up until now, the settlement agent has always been kind of over there. They do what they do. We're the lender. We do what we do. We give them stuff.
So essentially, from a lender's perspective, there was a very limited amount of due diligence paid to who they were and what their qualifications were.
Right. Or certainly they wanted to make sure that they didn't, run away with all the money and so on. But the due diligence and the relationship that was very remote. Now they're basically tied together. So now all of your settlement agents are on the same bucket. You got due diligence, every one of them.
So the collaborative effort that needs to happen as part of the new closing disclosure is you're saying forcing lenders to be more tightly working with the settlement agents, bringing the third-party relationship to the forefront.
Right.
Right. So the oversight of third parties has always been out there, but we're certainly see that take a much stronger role in what the CFPB and other regulators are asking our clients to explain when they come out to do a visit.
Right. And remember kind of what I was talking about. The part I didn't get to is, and you'll get tired of me saying this is a show and tell world. You need to be able to show what you're doing and be able to tell what it is. You have to demonstrate. And how do you demonstrate? You got to build the records. Did you look up, Sean's escrow company? Do I know whether he is licensed or not?
And you got to be able to report that quickly.
Right. I need to save that. Does Sean have insurance? Not only are they licensed properly, do they have any other requirements? What's their track record? What's their, with their E&O coverage and so on, so that you are building that record and you can demonstrate that you're properly.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It's always been part. So there's not a whole lot new there, other than that is really coming to the forefront. I don't think we can emphasize that enough. That this third-party oversight continues to be a strong topic inside of our lender clients that we work with. So.
Absolutely.
All right, Neil. So we've covered FRID. Let's move to our next topic, which is the FHA 4000.1 handbook update.
That's right, and that's a new number. I know they have the numbering system. I don't really understand it, but it used to be like 4150 or something like that. That's all right. But this is actually a really big deal for the FHA, and it actually is doing a real favor for appraisers and everybody else.
Right.
What they did is they took, it kind of been a lot of work. They took their existing handbooks, all these different handbooks. They put them together. They took all of the mortgagee letters back 30 years, little guidance here, little guidance there, and they put them all in the same document. So you don't have to go find out, by the way, you missed the 2011-12 mortgagee letter. How can you possibly have missed that, And
so lenders and appraisers alike now can easily find out what's expected of them with respect to FHA.
Right.
So go ahead. So from the perspective of when they made this cleaning up and aggregation, were there any significant changes that are relevant for appraisers?
So in other words, did they hide any tidbits?
Did they? Yeah.
Actually, they actually did a good job. If I'm following what I think I saw. First off, they moved this out. It was issued in June, but it's now effective in the middle of September 14th. But one of the things they did is that they really changed something. They highlighted it in the current version. But some of these things that they talk about if they go through their FAQs or not only, they're things that these are always the rules, but we really mean it this time.
So would you say? I mean, we've heard different people from the FHA talk over the last few months.
Yeah.
They seem to be emphasizing certain things. So does that mean that they're going to start dinging regulators, so to speak, when they or dinging lenders, for not doing these things?
Well, okay.
Or appraisers?
Remember, we're going to get to the HUD, FHA, electronic appraisal delivery.
Okay.
Right. And we'll get to that. But that's what's going to happen. Let me go through some of the changes that they've done. Some are significant. Others are really issues that they've had to deal with, and they're not unique necessarily to FHA.
Right.
So, okay. Sales history of comparables. I'm sorry, this is kind of tiny. I could have made it smaller, but
Well, you know how you lawyers.
You're
trying to see how much you can cram on a page.
Right.
All right.
Okay. So this is a big deal. Sales history of comparables. It used to be a 1 year. It's now 3 years. So, and if there's been any, presumably if there were prior sales in that 3-year period, you not only get what was the comp sale that just happened, so more due diligence on comparables.
Okay, great.
Okay. Second one is, and I'm gonna kind of take these two together. This is property eligibility, non-residential use of property. This actually is not unique to FHA. What I'm going to say is unique to them.
Sure.
But this is exactly the same problem that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac have, and that is their charter only allows them to make loans on certain properties.
Sure, sure.
So one of the things they look at is mixed-use properties, and I'll give you the example is it a corner grocery store that happens to have some apartments upstairs, or is it an apartment that happens to have a grocery store downstairs? And so what they're going to say is, okay, this is a basic test, and they're going to ask you, and it's in the guide.
Right.
You know, is it predominantly residential? That means a minimum. I mean, you know, we're talking about measuring too. Minimum of 51% of the entire building square footage has got to be residential. So it's not just. If I look from the outside, is one more important. I got to do my due diligence. I got to pay attention because that really is a property eligibility question.
So, from a perspective of FHA, the appraisal and the appraiser play a key role in helping gather this information.
Yep.
So that the lender can then make a decision based on the FHA guidance.
Right. Right.
So the lender plays, the appraiser plays an important role. And so it's important for appraisers to understand this because if they fail in their duties to comply with FHA guidance, then potentially the lender downstream could get hit.
Right.
For being out of compliance.
Right. Well, no, it's worse than that because I'm FHA. I am not permitted by charter. Doesn't allow me to buy those barges. I guess you get to keep it. No. You know, but that's the, you know, and you see that same problem with, as I said, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac.
All right.
The same thing shows up, and this is where you get to take your highest and best use hat on and really take advantage, you know, use those skills. They're also the same thing about accessory dwelling units. That's kind of like, is it a, what do they call it, a mother-in-law unit, or is it really another house in the back that you're renting? And that's a big deal. And so on.
All right.
Okay.
So moving on.
I love the next one. I really love. This is the attic. Everybody loves to talk about the attic. You know, they really do. You need to see if there's anything in the attic that you can see.
They keep emphasizing that.
They seem to like that, and I think it's because they've had enough circumstances where there's been. Let me guess, dry rot, or there's been somebody's done something, or leaks.
So had they known about that, then they may or may not have issued the guarantee on the loan.
Remember that FHA has a dual obligation, not just with respect to loans, but housing quality. You know, that is part of their franchise. So.
And appliances?
Head and Shoulders, you know, the old Head and Shoulders, you got to be able to do appliances. Check the appliance. I could read it to you, but I would only bore you to death. The only thing I would say is that you do have to check the appliances, but try not to burn the house down. There have been believe it or not, that some houses, you know, it's a vacant house. You turn the appliance on, you go on and off, do something else, and the thing's still burning, and you know. So, but they really want you to turn the appliances on. Anything that's attached. I mean, the refrigerator is going to go, you know.
Sure.
But if it's built in. You know,
turn it on.
Got to turn it on, and somehow you're supposed to check.
All right. So now, using the cost and income approach to value, I mean, that's something that we see a lot less of. We've seen a lot less of over the last, you know, decade, I guess. But they're emphasizing their expectation that it must be utilized.
Right. Well, which is right. It's like, hey, don't ignore those things. I think the last one is really symptomatic of a change in general with respect to valuation issues. And this is not just, I left this in here specifically, not just because it's FHA, but it really applies to every appraisal assignment. You're going to get many more requirements expecting you to at least understand what do energy efficient solar units, all that sort of stuff, how do they contribute to value?
So if I'm a lender and I need to ensure that my processes and systems ensure that if there are these type of enhancements to a home, that they're considered by the appraiser.
Yeah,
I'm using qualified personnel. Not every appraiser would be qualified potentially to analyze the value of solar panels.
Right, but but to a certain extent, they should be aware that there are solar panels. Right. Do buyers in this neighborhood care about that? They don't, again, it's an influence on value or it's not. You're the appraiser. You tell me what the market's doing with that particular thing.
And from the perspective of how FNC helps our customers, the generally accepted appraisal rules, the GAR rules that are part of the CMS platform, a large segment of those rules are geared toward helping lenders ensure compliance with FHA.
Right.
And the rules and considerations that specifically apply to appraisals.
Right.
And so we work very hard to ensure that wherever possible, the GAR rules mirror the FHA handbook and expectations and guidelines so that lenders can use the GAR system, the GAR rules as a tool in helping them with their underwriting.
Right, yeah, so you don't trip on these things. Because at some point they get like, are there any other more rules? Well, there are.
Right.
And this is a lot to remember. You need to use a system that helps you.
Right. And ours is a component of what we encourage our lenders to adopt, and it's part of the interagency guidelines and a risk-based review process.
Yeah.
And by using the GAR rules specifically with FHA, you can adopt a risk-based review process.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So let's keep talking about FHA and shift gears now
just
to the.
Real quickly, and this is actually a repeat because it's just to remind people. You asked about will the FHA be looking at these issues?
Yeah.
Well, they have been, but what you're really going to see is that they're going to have the same automated tools that are available to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac starting in a year from now. It was announced last in the emergency letter, 2013, but they're going to be required June 27, 2016, which we all say, oh man, that's a year out. Nah, year's not that long. But now this is one of those phase in, unlike the TRID rules, you can actually, there's no reason to do it now.
Right.
But we do have some early adopters that are.
Right. There's I believe there's a pilot going on right now, and I think actually today some of our we're participating with FHA in an early adopter call. So there's a lot of activity going on that. FNC is very engaged with FHA regarding this direct integration, and as part, similarly to how we helped our lenders on the UCDP and the UAD process, the delivery to the FHA portal, the EAD, will become part of the FNC CMS platform as that becomes available, and there'll be more details, of course, for our clients as we get close to going live with that.
Right, and there's no advantage to say, oh my God, I want to be the first one and I want to be up live, September 1st. There's no advantage to that, but we will make sure that everybody is not only well informed, but it's all long before this happens.
Yeah, well in advance of the June time frame that we'll
But this is just a reminder that otherwise, you won't be surprised to see this is like submitting to UCTV and so on, and that all those things we just talked about, you can guarantee they'll all come up and so on.
Yes, sir. All right. So, Neil, appraiser qualifications for AQB. I mean, we're really digging deep into the details today. This is part of one of the governing bodies of appraisers.
That's right. And normally we don't talk about the qualifications board, but I thought it would be helpful. Let's start with trainees. Talk a little bit about trainees, and it'll explain kind of where the qualifications board is going. So what are you seeing with the trainees?
Well, one of the things that we've, in the last, I'll just use the last 7 to 10 years, we've seen fewer and fewer people entering the appraisal profession. And for various reasons we won't go into today, the acceptance of work by a trainee has been, it's not been well accepted for various reasons. And so what we're seeing now is that we've seen a slow, steady decline in the number of appraisers in the profession. Even though we're seeing more younger folks beginning to enter the profession, it's still a declining number.
Right.
And so one of the things that is out there is how do we help get more appraisers into the environment? Because at the end of the day, the lenders need these appraisers to facilitate the lending process.
Right.
If there's a shortage and I've got to wait 3 weeks for an appraisal, that slows the whole transaction down, and that's not what the industry wants.
No.
I mean, everyone knows that the appraisal is a valuable component of the lending decision, but the length of time. So long story short, there has to be a balance between how do we help people get into the profession and while ensuring that they're appropriately qualified.
Right.
And so the Appraisal Qualifications Board has proposed some ideas for minimizing the number or changing how an appraiser gets the appropriate qualifications.
Right.
And that ultimately will help with people being attracted to the profession.
Right.
And helping the lenders accept the work of trainees. You know, we've seen a couple of lenders step out recently that I'm aware of and say that they'll begin to they're going to begin doing trainees. That was at Wells Fargo, and that U.S. Bank mentioned that they were willing to accept the work of trainees under certain circumstances, of course. But that's what I've heard and has been reported.
Right.
But anyway, that shows that there's a need and a recognition that we need to shift back to where appraisers being trained are part of the equation.
Right. Well, and if you look at if you walked in today and if you wanted to get a license, you not only had to have a college degree, you had to, including all the courses, you had to pass the exam, and then you had to come up with 1,500 hours of experience. And because most lenders have not accepted the work of trainees, or in fact, some don't even want to hear trainees mentioned in the report, how do I have enough economic value to using a trainee so they can get their 1,500, 2,000, or 2,500 hours? And that's the problem. The other one is, lawyers don't have a number of hours requirement. You learn on the job. So, you go from that to the other side but you still got to learn how to do this, right? You got to learn from somebody. And at the other end, you have all these hours that are required. The question, part of the question is, well, so if I'm asking 1,500 hours, what do I think is happening in those 1,500 hours? And so part of the analysis is, maybe I need to start with what is I'd like the appraiser to know how to do. Because, Sean, you're a very experienced, qualified appraiser. If you were to train me, I would learn, maybe I got lucky, 50% of what you told me, right? But it would be biased a little bit by your experience. And, in a build, or Caitlin or somebody, they were my trainees, it'd be different. Maybe there's a need to start with, well, what is it we want people to know? Anyway,
so we bring this to the attention of the folks on the call because there's an opportunity to give input to the process now. And it matters to appraisers, and it matters to lenders. And so this discussion is going on, and we encourage you to, whatever your views may be, to take the time to write comments and be involved.
Absolutely, and there's going to be a big public meeting about this, in October.
All right, Neil. So let's move to the final topic we're going to discuss today, which is the appraisal management company regulations.
Right. The final, our last one, they were going to, it's kind of like it's any minute now. They've finally been issued. They're effective because they're published in the Federal Register August 2015. And so we can count forward 36 months from that. But this is the important thing. This is and this is by statute. This came out of Dodd-Frank. This is voluntary regulation. A state is not required under the law to regulate AMCs, which means that if you don't have a statute in your state, AMCs can't operate except, we'll call them.
In a federally regulated.
Yeah, federally regulated. Well, if you have federally regulated, there's a carve out for federally regulated AMCs. But basically, if you don't have it, and of course there are some states where they say, well, we don't like those people anyway.
So I think right now there's about 36 or 38 states that do have some type of AMC regulation in place.
Correct.
So within 36 months, the remaining states would need to put regulation in place on AMCs.
Right.
The existing states would have to make sure they're in compliance at a minimum with the federal statutes delivered.
Right.
And if they don't do that within that 36 months, then an AMC would not be able to operate essentially in a state that was not in compliance.
That's exactly right.
Yep. So now you said there's a few carve-outs.
Well, the only big carve-out is that And then, I'll come to that in a second. What you do is, the appraisal subcommittee they're one that does the National Registry today. If appraisers, they're going to do the National Registries of AMC.
That's right.
They are also the one who's going to figure out what the registry fees are for AMCs, because there's a lot of different ways you can calculate that. They could be a lot of money or a little money or something like that.
So today AMCs pay a fee to each state where they're licensed, I would presume, and then and they'll continue to do that.
Right.
But they'll also have a federal fee that may be part of that, I would presume.
Well, right, yeah, right now that because you have an appraiser license or certification, where your state is collected a national registry fee from you that has gone to the National Registry. The AMCs would be required to have national registry fees based on how many people are on their panel or some other way. It would also be transmitted.
So the National Registry could be beneficial to a lender to ensure that an AMC is properly licensed. So that will be
right. No, you want to see that part, but and the question is how much of the fees. So okay. So if basically. If the two things is the carve-out is at the bottom, federally regulated AMC. And nobody's really exactly sure. I would have argued that an owned and controlled by an insured depository institution follow the normal rules for affiliates, but nobody seems to follow that. We don't know what that is, but there seem to be only a few who could possibly qualify. But if you are one of those, it doesn't matter what your state wants to do. You can operate. The other ones, real quickly, is a minimum standard. The states may exceed this requirement. Who wrote that? I did it. They may exceed those requirements. And one other thing that is, I put up there, appraisal company versus AMC. There is a clear distinction. An appraisal company that hires appraisers as employees is not an appraisal management company.
And there are several out there that are national in size. Yes,
very, very large ones that are in that category. Now, some states have sort of said, hey, employees count, but whatever. But anyway, so they do make that distinction, and they say that, and it's pretty clear. We know because we're not going to get down in the weeds about what's an independent contractor, but if you treat it as an employee for tax purposes, you're an employee, and if you're not, you're not. So anyway, and so and then the last piece is, which is what everybody loves to know. One of the pieces here is number 5 of the things that you're supposed to do. Establish and comply with processes and controls reasonably designed to ensure that the AMC conducts its appraisal management services in accordance with requirements of Section 129E, A through I. I'm sure you have all that memorized of the Truth in Lending Act, blah, 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 and regulations they're under. Okay, those are the appraisal independence requirements that are in Truth in Lending. And they deal with independence or deal with mandatory reporting and all this stuff. But of course, it also includes customary and reasonable fees. The question is going to be, and it's the current question is, well, what does that mean? States tend to regulate this today either because they've got state-based, they already have something in there. A lot of them have fees, dues, and stuff, but oftentimes, and frankly, this is, remember I said touch, show, and tell? They often use the record-keeping requirements for, with respect to AMCs as a way to regulate that area. It's not necessarily that we disagree with what you do, but you don't have good enough support.
Yeah.
You're not, that sort of stuff.
We don't know how you got to the answer you got to, so to speak.
And here's my comment. Okay. Every month you can look in the state bar journal and see who got disbarred. Okay. Or for that matter, there's the real estate journal. Who got sanctioned? Who got sanctioned? Okay. Right. Okay. I can tell you that the topmost one is always taking money from the trust account. Now, why is that? That's because, I can find it, I can see it, and it's easy. So you're going to see regulators using something that is like record-keeping requires. Easy to find, easy to see, and so on, as opposed to you were really an idiot when you didn't
Right.
handle this case, or you know.
No, we have seen a couple of enforcement actions by different states regarding customary and reasonable fees.
Right, but a lot of those, you know, we've seen the consent orders. A lot of them have come back to regulatory requirements, so record-keeping requirements. But you're going to believe me, this issue is not dead. This has been around for 5 years, but
And we haven't seen much on it
No.
with regard to enforcement of customary and reasonable fees.
Right.
So we definitely know that we're close.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, that concludes the material that we had put together today. So we'll pause for a moment and collect any questions we might have received, and try and address those. All right, we're gathering the questions. Bear with us for a moment. All right, go ahead, Neil.
Okay, you know, I sent my appraiser out to the property, and there were these two big, ugly, mean dogs in the backyard, and the appraiser came back and says, I got to go out there again. I can't go out there and appraise that house. Is that a changed circumstance or an extraordinary condition that allows me to redisclose the
So you're referring into the new
Yeah.
bid guidelines.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
can I give the customer a new loan estimate
Right,
because there's dogs in the yard?
right, or...
And I need to, and the appraiser wants to charge $50 or $75
Right.
for a reinspection fee.
Right, you know... And,
Okay, so what's the answer?
Well, no.
This should be, it's black and white, right?
Well, maybe the dogs are black and white. Well, no, you know, the problem with an extraordinary condition is you really have to think of it as extraordinary. You know, they gave some examples in there of what they thought, you know, okay, how about the title insurance company went out of business? You know,
Okay, so
you get a
that's
quote, you know, or you get out there and the property is now in litigation about an encroachment. Okay. Those are changed, or frankly, if you're an appraiser, you go out there and you find, in fact, remember when we talked about the accessory unit?
Sure.
You go out there and the appraiser says, no way, that is 2 houses on the lot.
It's a duplex.
It's
right.
a duplex, not what I thought it
So
was.
essentially something that requires the lender to rethink the loan program or
Right,
the
right.
pricing of the loan. That would be a changed circumstance.
It's really got to be something.
So the notion that a lender is going to be willing to, when we don't know this,
Right.
but the notion that a lender is going to be willing to redisclose the loan estimate and start the whole clock over a small discrepancy, relatively speaking, between the appraisal fee that was estimated and the fees that are necessary, that's probably not going to happen because of all the other challenges in redisclosing.
Yeah.
And plus, based on our reading of the regulation, we don't think that meets the criteria for a change in circumstances.
Right. You know, and you know it's like anything else. If you think it's a change in circumstances, what are the first ones people are going to look at? Those are the ones that always get examined. So anyway, that does come up. We hear that a lot. I just do not see that. You know, it really has to be something you just did not expect.
Neil, we have reached one question, and we have reached the top of the hour, so we will be respectful of everyone's time. We will say a big thank you to each of you for taking some time to listen to Neil and I share information. We hope that the information has been helpful to you. Feel free to send any questions into webinars at any time, and we'll be happy to address those. And until next quarter, have a great day.
That's right. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.